Hey, class. We're talking about the Middle Ages today. Still talking about the Hundred Years' War, branching out from last before spring break. Continuing this, the Hundred Years' War was between England and France. Uh, it was started by King Edward the Third. He claimed that he was the rightful king of France, and he was the king of England at the time, but he claimed he was the rightful king of France as well, because through his mother Isabella. So that's what started all. Now it wasn't all about that, about just who was king at this point. It was, they had other little disputes that kept this war going on. It went on for well over 100 years, for about 116 years actually. So, but it was between France and it was between England. And if you look right here, you've got the Battle of Agincourt, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But that's what we're talking about today, the Middle Ages, the 100 Years' War between England and France.
Middle Ages, Hundred Years' War. England and France. The Hundred Years' War was fought between England and France and lasted from 1337 to 1453. The war was a series of battles with long periods of peace in between.
So they had long periods of peace in between, but it was a series of battles, and like I said, it was over 100 years that they fought before they finally France finally won their independence back from them. So how did it start? It started with this man right here, King Edward III. Like I said earlier, he he believed he was the rightful heir to the throne of France. And I'll get into that in just a few minutes ago. But he's the one that started it all. Now, they kept fighting. There were other disputes that they fought over. They fought over wolf trade. They fought over certain areas of land. They fought because Scotland sided with France. So uh, there were a number of different things that kept this war going on so long. But this man right here, King Edward III, all right, gray beard right here, he was the one that started it all in 1337.
How did it start? Small disputes and battles had been going on between the French and the English for years. However, in 1337, King Edward III of England claimed that he was the rightful king of France. This began the long battle between the two countries. Other disputes kept the fighting going for over 100 years. This included the control of the valuable wool trade, disputes over certain areas of land, and the support for Scotland by the French.
So King Edward III, he believed he was the rightful heir to the French crown through his mother Isabella, and you can see Isabella up here. That was his mother. Uh, he first laid claim to this throne when he was just 15 years old. All right, when King Charles IV of France died, and he didn't have a male heir, so he said, "Hey, I should be king." But instead, they chose this man right here, King Philip, to be their king. The French did. Well, of course, that didn't make King Edward too happy, because he felt like he was the one that should have the crown of France as well. And I always say in this stuff here, it's always about power. It's always about who can be king in the Middle Ages. That's what they wanted. That's what it was all about. Because if you were a king, you had all the control.
Edward III. King Edward III believed that he was the rightful heir to the French crown through his mother Isabella. He first laid claim to the throne when he was 15 years old, and King Charles IV of France died without a male heir. Instead of Edward, the French chose Philip to be their king.
All right. So when King Philip IV of France, he took control of this area here, Aquitaine, and King Edward in 1337, he had enough. So he decided to fight back. He decided to invade France. Now, he didn't invade to try to take control, though. He went to have raids, to plunder, to steal, and just cause havoc, basically. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. But it all that started when King Philip took control of Aquitaine.
Edward III continued. When King Philip IV of France took control of Aquitaine from the English in 1337, King Edward III decided to fight back. He decided to invade France and reassert his right to the French throne.
All right. So like I said, he didn't attempt to conquer and control the land of France. All right. Instead, he had raids. He decided to do raids, and these raids were called javatis. I think that's the correct pronunciation of it. If it's not, then y'all have to forgive me. All right. But he would strike deep into the land of France. He would burn the crops. He'd plunder cities, and he just wanted to cause and wreak havoc. And but that was the way he wanted to try to take control of France by doing this.
Javatis. Edward did not attempt to conquer and control the land of the French. Instead, he led raids into the land called Javatis. He would strike deep into the land of the French, burning crops, plundering cities, and causing havoc.
Like I said, they were called javatis. They were these raids that were called javatis. That'll be on your questions here at the end. All right, then you had the Black Prince, which was King Edward's son. All right, Edward the Black Prince was his name. All right, he became a famous hero in England during the 100 Years' War, because he led the English to major victories over the French at Poitiers, and he also captured the King John II, the current King of France, during this time period. So this was King Edward's son. All right, his name was also Edward.
The Black Prince. In the 1350s, the army of King Edward III was led by his son, the valiant Edward the Black Prince. The Black Prince became a famous hero to the English and was known for his chivalry. The Black Prince led the English to major victories over the French. At the Battle of Poitiers, the Black Prince captured King John II, the current King of France.
So, and the English loved him for that. He was considered a hero for this. All right. So King Edward agreed to release King John for some ransom, 1,000,000 crowns, some additional land, and King Edward eventually died. All right. So the son of the Black Prince, Richard II, this little kid right here, took control of England at that time. He wasn't but 10 years old. So while he was king and so young, there was a period of peace. I told you this war went on for a long time, but there were periods where there was peace in between. There wasn't fighting, so they didn't fight for like the whole 100 years.
Peace. King Edward agreed to release King John II for a ransom of 3,000,000 crowns and some additional land. When King Edward died, the son of the Black Prince, Richard II, became king. He was only 10 years old. There was a period of relative peace between England and France.
All right. So the Battle of Agincourt, this was at the beginning slides. When King Henry the Fifth became king of England in 1413, he said, "Hey, I want to be king. All right, I should have the throne for France." So he invaded France and he won this big battle, the Battle of Agincourt, where he didn't have but about 6,000 soldiers, and he defeated this French army that had like 25,000. So eventually the French gave in, and King Charles IV named Henry as their heir to the throne. So Henry took over as the French king.
Battle of Agincourt. When King Henry V became king of England in 1413, he once again laid claim to the throne of France. He invaded France and won a decisive battle at Agincourt. With only around 6,000 soldiers, he defeated a much larger French force of around 25,000. Eventually, the French gave in, and King Charles IV named Henry as their heir to the throne.
All right, then you've got Joan of Arc. Now she was with the French. All right, she's a woman. That's the first thing you notice. She's a woman. During this time, women soldiers were unheard of, but she was a soldier, and she also said she had these visions from God, that she saw these visions, and but she led the French to a bunch of different victories, okay, before she was captured by the English, and of course because she said she saw visions of God. What were they notorious for then? We talked about Salem witch trials earlier in the year. All right, well they thought she was a witch because she said she had visions from God. So what did they do to her? They burned her at the stake.
Joan of Arc. Many of the people in southern France did not accept English rule. In 1428, the English began to invade southern France. They began a siege of the city of Orleans. However, a young peasant girl by the name of Joan of Arc took leadership of the French army. She claimed to have seen a vision from God. She led the French to a victory at Orleans in 1429. She led the French to several more victories before she was captured by the English and burned at the stake.
All right, so the French were inspired by Joan of Arc's leadership, all right, and because, you know, that she became like a martyr, kind of. All right, so they continued to fight back, and eventually in 1453, they pushed the English out of France, all right, and this was the end of the 100 Years' War.
End of the war. The French were inspired by Joan of Arc's leadership and sacrifice. They continued to fight back. They pushed the English army out of France, taking Bordeaux in 1453, signaling the end of the 100 Years' War.
All right. So who was the 100 Years' War fought between? Was it A, England and France, B, the North and South, or C, no one? It was England and France. Those were the two countries that the 100 Years' War was fought between.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
All right. What king started the 100 Years' War? What was his name? Was it King Harold? Was it old graybeard King Edward III? Or was it King Richard? It was King Edward III. He laid claim to it when he was just 15 years old, but then in 1337 is when he finally decided, hey, I want control of this after France had took Aquitaine.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
All right. And what were the raids called that King Edward led in France? What were the raids called? Were they called A, Chibachis, B, Vikings, or C, nothing? They were called Chibachis. All right. And I think I'm saying that right, but I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up and see.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Raids were called Chibachis. Vikings, they like to raid too, but they weren't called Chibachis, what they did. All right, number 4, who became a hero to the English during the 100 Years' War? He was named a hero because of his victories. Was it A, Joan of Arc, B, the Black Prince, or C, King John, the one who signed the Magna Carta? It was the Black Prince. The Black Prince won all these victories. He captured the current King John II of France at the time, and he became a hero. He was major. He was famous, and he became a hero during the 100 Years' War. It was the Black Prince.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
And number 5, who claimed to have visions from God, and she was eventually burned at the stake? Was it A, Miss Margaret, B, Isabella, or C, Joan of Arc? Isabella was the king's mother, King Edward III's mother. So it wasn't her. We know it wasn't Miss Margaret. So it was Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc is one. She claimed to have visions from God. She led the French to a bunch of different victories, and they captured her and burned her at the stake.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
All right, class. This is all for today. I just want you to take this in. I'm also going to post the actual video with the Google Slides on here like I always do, and I'll post a couple of videos from YouTube to go along with the lesson. So I probably will post something else either on pirates or the Middle Ages on Thursday. So anyway, hope you all have a good day. I'll talk to you later.